A former Trump advisor is put on the spot during a live interview when one simple question completely changes the direction of the conversation. What started as a routine discussion quickly turns tense as weaknesses in the argument begin to show in real time. Before we dive into the full story, comment where you're watching from and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. This is one of those moments that proves how a single question can reshape an entire narrative and why political interviews often reveal more than expected.
Do you not think that when an 82-year-old man is arrested for posting something on Facebook, that is not a form of censorship?
Well, it depends what he posts, doesn't it? It depends if it's legal.
Well,
what did that 82-year-old man post?
Well, let's back up a minute here. If we are starting to scrutinize everything that someone says, if we're arresting them because it is hate speech.
What is that? You mentioned a specific case there. What is it this 82-year-old was arrested for?
Honestly, I can't remember, but what I do remember...
You're telling me that it's outrageous that an 82-year-old man was...
Back up a minute.
No, sorry, this is important because you just said this is an example of free speech under threat in the UK, but you can't tell me what he was arrested for.
I don't remember the
So why are you bringing it up then?
I brought it up as an example that if we are scrutinizing what an 82-year-old man posts on Facebook...
But you can't assess that without knowing what he said, can you?
Well, you know what? Let's just say I brought up a wrong example because I don't have the context
Could it possibly be
now.
Because it's all a load of nonsense and free speech isn't under threat in the UK at all, which I think you've just demonstrated respectfully?
You know what? I've been there I've lived in the UK for 24 years. And yes, I do believe that censorship, it started with political correctness.
Right.
And as political correctness moved from accusing people of microaggressions and then people getting triggered over what somebody said, it has been a form of putting a speech straitjacket on people.
So what can't you say in the UK right now without being arrested that you think people should have the right to say?
You know what? That's a very good question.
It is. Thank you.
It is. I can't answer that question, and I can't give you an example exactly. But see, what I find interesting.
Sorry, Jane. You've given me an example of free speech being under threat. You can't tell me what the person said.
Well,
I've asked you for one single thing that you can't say in the UK without the fear of being arrested, and you can't think of anything. It's because Britain still is a country, compared to the United States, by the way, where free speech absolutely exists and always will.
Well, we both see it differently then.
But you can't give me any single point of evidence whatsoever to back up your idea.
Why don't you give me an example of how free speech still exists and censorship is not there?
Because you don't get arrested by the police for saying anything that isn't incitement or hate speech in this country. People are free to express their opinions. People are free to give their views. We do not have a police state in this country, unlike, I might say, the way that the United States is going under Donald Trump.
Well, you know, that's interesting because it's not going that way with Donald Trump. It was going that way, and it's now reversing itself.
Right. So banning journalists from the White House because you don't like what they've written, demanding the impeachment of judges because you don't like what they've ruled, sacking government officials because they've dared to criticise you at any point in recent years, defunding universities because they're not doing what you do, threatening law firms if they don't toe the party line, defunding media organisations that you think are against you, arresting students because of what they've written on social media, and ramping up checks of people entering the UK to check they haven't posted anything on Facebook that you don't like, doesn't amount to any sort of attack on free speech.
That's really twisting things without the specific examples. You're giving...
No,
you're giving examples the same way I gave the example of the 82-year-old man.
But you didn't give any examples, and I've just given you 10.
No, you've just given me a very biased perspective.
Bias is facts. All of those things have happened. Which of those haven't happened? Have journalists been banned from the White House under the Trump administration?
have journalists been banned, or have they brought in alternative media that presents a different
I'm not talking about
angle?
Have journalists from organisations like the Associated Press been banned by the White House, yes or no?
Yes, they
Yes,
have.
right. Have judges been threatened with
But wait a
impeachment
minute.
because the White House doesn't like their rulings?
Wait
Yes
a
or
minute.
no?
Let's not do it that way. Let's go back to
Because the
that.
answer's
And
yes.
why were they? Why were they banned?
But so we accept, right, are we accepting that all the things I just suggested have happened?
If you don't let me finish, then we can't really have a conversation here, because you've got a very biased perspective
I'm not
here,
biased at all.
very angle.
I'm giving you facts, and I'm just asking whether you recognise that those things are true.
No. You know what? It's so interesting. Did we not have a bunch of fake news here? And in the U.S., we did. And why? Why did we have fake news? Because it was biased and it was wrong. And so that is one of the reasons. You know, you're listing 10 things and cutting me off. But then why was the Associated Press no longer welcome? Because they gave fake news that has been proven.
But Jan, you coming on the national radio station here on LBC and saying an 82-year-old man being arrested is an attack on free speech without having a clue what he's actually said is not fake news at all.
It's not. It's not that I haven't had a clue. I can't remember the specifics.
Right.
But the fact that.
But how can you know it's an attack on free speech if you can't remember what he'd actually said?
Well, you know, it's very interesting because you started this off by saying J.D. Vance had a dig. And so we don't get to have an intelligent discussion about whether there really is censorship going on, if people are afraid to speak out.
But he has had a dig, and that's his own language. He said previously when he talked about the UK...
No, you called it a dig.
So what stood out to me here is that this isn't the first time Dr. Jan Halper-Hayes has been in this kind of situation. She comes on to defend a position, but once the questioning becomes more direct, the argument starts to lose clarity under pressure. And I think part of what makes this interesting is the wider political backdrop around it. We're in a period where debates around free speech, especially in the UK and the US, are becoming increasingly heated. You even see figures like J.D. Vance and others weighing into these discussions, particularly around how free speech is being defined and where the limits are being drawn. From their perspective, there's a belief that certain political discussions, especially around sensitive cultural topics, including LGBT-related policy debates and wider ideological language rules, are becoming restricted or heavily managed in public institutions. That's part of the broader argument they're making about free expression being under pressure. Now, whether people agree with that or not, the key point in this clip is still the same. When Dr. Halper-Hayes is pushed into more specific questioning, the answers don't always come out as clearly as expected, and that's what creates the tension in these interviews. Because once you move away from broad political statements and into direct examples, it becomes much harder to maintain the same level of confidence in the argument. And that's why moments like this tend to spark so much discussion online, not just because of the personalities involved, but because it reflects a wider divide in how people interpret free speech, political influence, and media accountability today.